You're watching Monty TV. I'm Jackie Karsh, joined now by Jeff Richards from GGV Capital, which is a multi-stage venture capital firm based in Silicon Valley and in China. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, how do you kind of split between the US and China?
Yeah, it's a pretty complex setup. We're actually the only venture firm that really does it under one fund structure. We've been doing it for 17 years. Our team in China is very local. Our partners have lived there for a long time. A lot of our team are born and raised in China. And we've got a lot of inroads into the large tech companies in China. There's really 4 companies that really matter in China: Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and Xiaomi. We're an early investor in several of those.
Good work.
Yeah. So you've got to be very local and you've got to be very deep to do business in China. And then in the US, obviously, there's a lot of venture capital firms. We compete with all the firms that you know and love. And the one thing we try and do is bridge the gap between founders and companies across the US and China and really create value across those 2 markets because they're the 2 largest economies in the world.
So much development in both of those countries. I mean, China is so huge in terms of mobile. Is that where you guys are kind of headed in terms of focus, or are you looking elsewhere?
So the mobile market in China is 3 to 5 years ahead of the US. You look at mobile payments, you look at engagement with microcurrency, you look at social media. So we are trying to take some of the trends we're seeing in China and bring them to the US in some of those areas. In other scenarios, we're trying to help companies bridge the gap between the 2 markets. We have a company here in the US called Wish. It's probably the fastest growing private e-commerce company. And their back end, their entire supply chain is based in China. Their suppliers are all based in China, the team is based here, and they sell to customers in the US and around the world. We have a company in China called Xiaohongshu, which is another e-commerce business based in China, but a lot of their users and their influencers are based in Japan and Korea and elsewhere, influencing purchase behavior by millennials in China. So looking for those opportunities where we can find companies that want to be global businesses, whether they're based in China or they're based in the US, and then helping them create those synergies and take their business global.
If you say that China is about 3-5 years ahead in terms of mobile, do you look for companies in China that can apply that to the US, or do you work with companies in the US to kind of get a head start on what the Chinese have already accomplished?
Yes. A lot of the Chinese companies aren't that interested in the US. It's a small market compared to China for mobile. So if you look at e-commerce in China today is over 700 billion. It surpassed the US 2 or 3 years ago. You look at the number of mobile users in China, you've got over 800 million mobile users. In the US, you've got 300 million. So a lot of the Chinese entrepreneurs look at the market in China and say, gosh, I've got an addressable market of 800 million users. Why don't I focus my business here, get it right here, really be successful here? And then in some cases, look at other emerging markets, Latin America, Africa, Brazil, Russia, markets where they're not going to come in and try and compete with Facebook, Google, Apple. I mean, the US is not only the richest country in the world, but we also have the most formidable technology competitors. So a lot of these companies are looking both at domestic China as the most interesting opportunity, and then other markets where there may not be as much competition. Southeast Asia, right? You've got hundreds of millions of brand new mobile users, an emerging middle class. We're an investor in a company in Southeast Asia called Grab Taxi, which is kind of an Uber for Southeast Asia. Very successful company that's doing business all over Southeast Asia. And those are hard markets to do business in, right? You're talking about Indonesia, Malaysia, and Taiwan, countries that people in the US don't understand very well. A lot of people in the US think Southeast Asia is a country, and the reality is it's a whole bunch of countries with different currencies and regulations and rules and political
government leaders and the whole works.
So it's kind of a unique vantage point that we have to invest and partner with those entrepreneurs.
You have Chinese entrepreneurs primarily focused on China. They think US is small. But US entrepreneurs are often looking to emerging markets, and in the venture world, you guys are always looking for opportunities to expand,
right.
A company that's doing really well in the US elsewhere. Are we not focusing enough on US and developing our products here, and we're looking too much to other countries and expanding too quickly?
If you go back 15 years ago, the majority of the internet users in the world were in the US. Today, there's 2 billion mobile phone users around the world. There's only 300 million in the US. So we're 15% of the global market. And so entrepreneurs smartly early on are saying, gosh, if I want to build a big company, I've got to grow outside the US. You look at Snapchat in their IPO, one of the biggest questions for investors is, can this company be successful outside of the domestic US? They do have some international users, but clearly if they want to have 1 billion users, they've got to be phenomenally successful outside the US. So I think it's a new capability that entrepreneurs are developing, a new muscle they're trying to flex here in the US. Entrepreneurs outside the US are much more global, right? They travel more, their passports have more stamps, they're flying a lot, they're much more comfortable in that mobile environment. And I think what you're seeing now is a next generation of entrepreneurs in the US. You look at Peter and Danny from Wish, they travel all the time. They're very comfortable traveling around the world. So we're looking for founding teams that have, passports with lots of stamps on them. Because if you want to look at Facebook today, where's all their growth coming from? It's predominantly coming from emerging markets. So these are really important markets that these founders have got to go after, and more they're doing it early.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, and maybe we'll be the next China in 3-5 years in terms of mobile. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.